Hi, welcome back to the basement. I'm Steve Lewis, and welcome to part 3 of our in-depth look at pop culture in the year 1978. This time we'll be looking at the third quarter of the year, July through September. We've had to move at a breakneck pace to get through each of the first 2 quarters. Let's see how we do here with the third quarter. Without further ado, let's begin with a look at the top 10 albums as the quarter began on July 1st, 1978. At number 1 in its 24th and final week at number 1 was Saturday Night Fever. This would stay in the top 10 until September 16th, and also was the only album from the beginning of the prior quarter still in the top 10. At number 2 was City to City by Gerry Rafferty. Number 3 was Feels So Good by Chuck Mangione. At number 4 was the Commodores' Natural High album. Number 5 was the FM soundtrack. The O'Jays' So Full of Love was at number 6. At number 7 was Bob Seger's Stranger in Town, his highest charting album so far, which would eventually go to number 4. At number 8 was Bruce Springsteen's Darkness on the Edge of Town, which would eventually go to number 5. Number 9 was Andy Gibbs' Shadow Dancing album. And at number 10 was Carly Simon's Boys in the Trees album. The top 10 singles on July 1st were at number 1, Shadow Dancing by Andy Gibb. Baker Street by Gerry Rafferty was at its number 2 peak, featuring its memorable saxophone breaks by Raphael Ravenscroft. Bonnie Tyler's It's a Heartache was at its number 3 peak. ABBA's Take a Chance on Me was at number 4. It would peak at number 3 the next week. Used to Be My Girl by the O'Jays was at number 5 and would peak at number 4 the next week. You Belong to Me by Carly Simon was at its number 6 peak. This was written by Carly Simon and Michael McDonald of the Doobie Brothers. The Doobie Brothers version had been released on Livin' on the Fault Line the previous summer. At number 7 was Bob Seger's Still the Same. This would reach number 4 on July 22nd. Love Is Like Oxygen by Sweet was at its number 8 peak. At number 9 was Peter Brown's Dance With Me. Say the word and he'll summon the band with his hand. This would peak at number 8 the next week. At number 10 was Heatwave's The Groove Line, which would reach number 7 on July 15th. Even if you weren't really a disco fan, this song was pretty hard to resist. Other top 10 singles that came and went in the third quarter included Miss You by the Rolling Stones, which hit number 1 on August 5th. Not once, not twice, but 3 Times a Lady by the Commodores, their first chart topper, which hit number 1 on August 12th. Donna Summer's Last Dance would go to number 3 on August 12th. And Barry Manilow's Copacabana, the hottest spot north of Havana, would hit number 8 on August 12th. Love Will Find a Way by Pablo Cruise would hit number 6 on August 19th, and Frankie Valli's title track from the movie Grease would hit number 1 on August 26th. Another score for RSO and for Barry Gibb, who wrote the song for the film. Walter Egan's Magnet and Steel would go to number 8 on August 26th, and Foreigner's Hot Blooded would reach number 3 on September 9th. Shame by Evelyn Champagne King would hit number 9 on September 9th, and Earth, Wind & Fire's version of Got to Get You Into My Life would hit number 9 on September 16th. Andy Gibbs' and Everlasting Love would hit number 5 on September 23rd, yet another score for RSO and for Barry Gibb in 1978. Big new album releases in July included A Taste of Honey's self-titled album with its big hit Boogie Oogie Oogie, which would go to number 1 on September 9th. July 12th saw the release of Kenny Loggins' Night Watch album. July 23rd brought the release of the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band soundtrack. We'll talk more about this in a little bit. Suffice to say that musically, probably the best thing that came out of it was Earth, Wind & Fire's version of Got to Get You Into My Life, though I'll admit I actually like Robin Gibb's version of Oh Darlin' as well. Aerosmith's cover of Come Together was pretty popular. It went to number 23 on September 23rd. As you can see, the album itself was a lavish affair. It actually even came with a poster showing Peter Frampton and the Bee Gees as Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I don't know whoever hung this in their bedroom, but now it's kind of an interesting period piece at least. Also released in July was Blam by the Brothers Johnson. August 2nd saw the release of Boston's sophomore album, Don't Look Back. On August 11th, we got Chic's C'est Chic album, and on August 18th we got the release of The Who's Who Are You album. This picture disc version came a little later. We talked about the big picture disc boom of 1978 a little bit way back in episode 4. We'll touch on it again when we get to the fourth quarter of 1978. Sadly, 2.5 weeks after the album's release on September 7th, we lost Who drummer and all-round character Keith Moon. He was amazingly 32. Amazing because a lot of people never thought he'd make it to 32. Also amazing because by this time he seemed a lot older than 32. Still a monumentally sad loss for Who fans and fans of great rock drumming in general. Other albums released in August included Donna Summer's Live and More, and Dan Fogelberg and Tim Weisberg's Twin Sons of Different Mothers. Early in September, we got the release of Pieces of Eight by Styx, and First and Last by Lynyrd Skynyrd, a collection of their early recordings. Later on in September, we got Living in the USA by Linda Ronstadt, Yes's Tornado album, Al Stewart's Time Passages, Brother to Brother by Gino Vanelli, and Cruisin' by the Village People. The single YMCA would be at number 8 by year end and would go to number 2 on February 3rd, 1979. Also released around this time was Chuck Mangione's follow-up to his hit Feel So Good, Children of Sanchez, and Steve Martin's Wild and Crazy Guy album. Other notable albums from this period included Smooth Talk by Evelyn Champagne King. This, her debut album, had been released in August of 1977 and took the better part of a year before Shame became a hit single and took the album to number 14 in the summer of '78. And Come Get It by Rick James, which had been released back in April. It entered the top 40 albums in late July. The single You and I became a number 13 hit in August. There was also Foxy's Get Off album, which hit number 12 late in the summer, and Mixed Emotions by Exile. The album hit the top 40 late in September and went to number 14 based on their hit Kiss You All Over, which went to number 1 on September 30th. Meanwhile, at the movies, the number 1 box office smash Grease was still packing them in. Big new movie releases in July included, on July 14th, Foul Play, a romantic comedy starring Chevy Chase and Goldie Hawn. It was Chevy Chase's big screen debut and surprisingly mainstream from a former member of the mildly subversive, not ready for primetime players. Also released on July 14th was Hooper, another Burt Reynolds and Sally Field comedy. On July 19th, we got The Revenge of the Pink Panther starring Peter Sellers, the 6th film in Blake Edwards' Pink Panther series. On July 21st came the release of what was meant to be one of the box office sensations of the summer, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, starring the red-hot, omnipresent Bee Gees, along with Peter Frampton and a massive, wildly eclectic all-star cast, including George Burns coming off the hit Oh God as Mr. Kite, the now nearly as hot as the Bee Gees Steve Martin as Maxwell Edison, Alice Cooper as the Sun King, Billy Preston, who at least had a legitimate connection to the Beatles as Sgt. Pepper, and many others, including a few acts they were still trying to launch, like Stargard as the Diamonds. As it happened, it was a critical and box office bomb. Like a lot of people at the time, I thought the whole project reeked of hubris. Get a bunch of big names, a bunch of big songs, put them together, don't worry about plot or whether the actors match the characters they're playing, throw all that slop in a trough, give it a big promotion, and the public will eat it up. There was also the sneaking feeling that with this, RSO was trying to proclaim the Bee Gees as the new Beatles. That was a losing strategy, nobody liked that. Imagine in 1964 if the Beatles had done a movie called Heartbreak Hotel with characters like Hound Dog and Ted E. Bear. I also took umbrage at hype stickers that began appearing on the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper album that summer, proclaiming it the original classic. Maybe I misinterpreted it, but to my mind at the time, I took this as a backhanded way of saying that the mostly extremely tepid soundtrack album was the new classic. Peter Frampton's account in his autobiography is very interesting. He apparently signed on expecting something very different. For one thing, he says he was told that Paul McCartney was going to be in it, coming in at the end to save Pepperland. Having McCartney in it at least would have given it an air of legitimacy, but as it was, none of the Beatles got anywhere near it. Frampton soon realized he was on a sinking ship and all he could do was give it his best shot and hope to put it behind him. The movie is dull, incoherent, and just plain terrible. There are some truly difficult to watch performances by the non-musicians like George Burns and Steve Martin. Most of the rest just appears insipid. I tried watching it again a while back, thinking maybe I could now enjoy it for the camp value, but the best I could really do was feel embarrassed for everybody involved. There is a slight Beach Boy connection with this, however. At the ending, they packed in nearly every celebrity they could find and billed them as the guests of Pepperland, apparently trying to create a tableau of famous faces like appeared on the original Sgt. Pepper cover. You had everybody from Tina Turner to Carol Channing, from Edgar Winter to Helen Reddy. In among them, you might catch a glimpse of former Beach Boy Bruce Johnston. More likely, you'll catch a glimpse of his wild orange film reel shirt. He's barely visible in the crowd behind Wolfman Jack and Bobby Womack. Here's a detailed view of Bruce. In other big movie releases, a week later, on July 28th, came National Lampoon's Animal House featuring John Belushi of Saturday Night Live. Belushi in this movie seemed much cooler in 1978 than Chevy Chase in Foul Play. On August 2nd, we got Interiors, Woody Allen's follow-up to Annie Hall, a very somber Ingmar Bergman-esque, critically acclaimed feature. On September 15th came Cheech and Chong's Up in Smoke, which got terrible reviews but made a lot of money. And I've got to admit there are some sections in that really make me laugh. Also released on September 22nd was Almost Summer. Notable here not because it was a big blockbuster, but because it featured music by Celebration featuring Mike Love. The beginning of fall seems like an odd time for the nationwide release of a movie called Almost Summer. It was released regionally in Dallas and Oklahoma City on April 21st. The Almost Summer single had been released on April 2nd, and the soundtrack album had been released on May 8th. I'm not sure of the reason for the delay, though I suspect it may have had to do with Grease being released in June. The filmmakers might have reasoned that a lot of their target teen audience would go see Grease for a second or third time before checking out Almost Summer, and decided to wait for Grease to begin cooling down at the box office. In July, the Beach Boys began recording their first album for Caribou CBS at Criteria Studios in Miami, Florida. It was a hot studio since the Bee Gees had been using it since 1975, following their label mate Eric Clapton, who had recorded 461 Ocean Boulevard there. It was responsible for all the Bee Gees' mid and late 70s output, Andy Gibbs hit records, and of course the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. Brian was soon determined to be unable to produce, so Bruce Johnston was called in to help out. Though he wouldn't become a member again for a while, Bruce was back in the fold from here on out. The Beach Boys played some live shows in July, and on August 28th were joined by Jan and Dean for 10 Days on the Road. The single, Peggy Sue with Hey Little Tomboy, was released on August 28th. And on September 25th, their final reprise album, the MIU album, was released. Of course, we'll talk more about this in the next episode. And finally, in September, the new television series premiered with such shows as Grandpa Goes to Washington, Kaz, The Waverly Wonders, American Pie, In the Beginning, Lifeline, Flying High, and Dick Clark's Live Wednesday. And if anybody remembers any of those shows, please let me know. Actually, there were a few shows that really caught on with the public that premiered in September, including Vegas, or more accurately, Vega $, a crime drama starring Robert Urich. WKRP in Cincinnati, a sitcom set at a struggling radio station starring Gary Sandy as Randy Travis and an ensemble cast featuring Lonnie Anderson as Jennifer Marlowe. Taxi, a sitcom set at a struggling cab company starring Judd Hirsch as Alex Rieger and an ensemble cast featuring Andy Kaufman as Lotka Gravitz. And Mork and Mindy, hands down the biggest hit of the new season, starring Pam Dauber as Mindy and comedy phenomenon Robin Williams as Mork from Ork, Nanu Nanu. So that'll bring us to the end of the third quarter of 1978. Please let me know what you think about this, particularly if you think I was too hard on the Sgt. Pepper movie. If there's some level you enjoyed on or something in there that I'm missing, please let me know. Love to hear your comments on that and on all of this. Please like and subscribe if you haven't. Next time we will talk about the MIU album in depth, and then we will wind up with the fourth quarter of 1978 and move on to other times and other things. Thanks for watching. Bye.